It's the SNL Hall of Fame podcast with your host, Jamie Dew, Chief Librarian Thomas Senna, and featuring Matt Ardill. And now, curator of the hall, Jamie Dew.
All right, thank you so much, Doug Donatz. It is great to be back here with you all in the SNL Hall of Fame podcast studios, deep within the SNL Hall of Fame. It's JD here, and I hope you're doing well. We are doing great here in the hall, but we would be remiss to remind you to please wipe those feet before coming inside. Especially with the snowy weather now, it just makes things messy. The SNL Hall of Fame podcast is a weekly affair. Each episode, we take a deep dive into the career of a former cast member, host, musical guest, or writer, and add them to the ballot for your consideration. Once the nominees have been announced, we turn to you, the listener, to vote for the most deserving and help determine who will be enshrined for perpetuity inside the SNL Hall of Fame. That's how we play the game. It's really quite simple. It's all about you. You get to listen, you get to vote, and you get to brag about the fact that you inducted the Hall of Famers. So there's that. I'm going to tell you that I'm excited about this week's episode, but I always tell you that, so it's a little redundant, I suppose. But I am excited. We are welcoming back our friend Bill Kenney, and he will be in conversation with Thomas about our first host of the season, Martin Short. Martin Short, of course, a legend in showbiz, and quite the character in the SNL world. The SNL cinematic universe, the butt of many jokes in terms of the Five Timers Club, and he seems to relish it. He plays that role so well. But I don't want to get into too much minutia because I like to leave that for my friend Matt in his corner, Matt's Minutia Minute Corner. So let's walk down to that intersection of walls where he is most likely loitering, and get to the bottom of this. Hey, Matt, how's it going, my friend?
Hey, JD, I am awesome. I am looking forward to talking about today's potential inductee.
Yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say he'll be an inductee, but you never know. This place is weird.
You never know. Like a lot of times you're thinking this person's going to make it right away, but you know, it might be like how he had to go to audition to Second City for like a dozen times before he got into the cast.
Well, we're bearing the lead here, even though the title of the episode is named after this person. So you already know who it is. But it is Martin Short that we're going to be talking about this week on the program.
Yeah. Who is actually not that short.
Oh.
He's 5'8". I mean, he's not a tall guy, but he's kind of average.
I think that's average height, yeah.
It's average height. I always thought he was shorter than that, but I'm maybe only very minorly taller than that. So we're about the same height.
Are you plotting all these? Are you plotting all these heights somewhere on a graph so that
I should do like that will be my project over the summer.
Who's the tallest nominee? You know?
Yeah. Well, Will Ferrell probably.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
yeah. But who comes next, kind of thing, or is there somebody taller? We never know. We'll find out.
Sure. Kevin, maybe. Oh.
Yeah.
He hasn't been nominated yet.
No. We will see. Well, I'll do the math. I'll do one of those comparison graphs.
Okay.
But yeah, Martin was born March 26, 1950. He graduated from Westdale Secondary School in Hamilton and later attended McMaster University, where he
Shout out to the Hammer.
Yeah. We have a kitty cat from Hamilton, Duncan. He's toothless and weird, and I love him very much.
Sounds very Hamiltonian to me.
Yes, he does. He does. Now, Martin studied social work before changing after leaving pre-med. and then subsequently leaving sociology. So academia probably wasn't in his future. He has 113 acting credits, 19 writing credits, 12 producer credits, 27 soundtrack credits, and 1 director credit, including the latest Aquaman film, which means I am going to have to watch that horrible movie now.
Oh, no.
Oh, geez, what I do for the love of Martin Short.
Right.
Now, his very first role was actually as a giant in a Visa commercial back in the 70s. So, which is, it's like interesting casting. He's a class frickin' act by literally all accounts. You can see how he rolled with the Today Show interview where Kathy Lee Gifford was asking him about his wife 2 years after she had passed. The man is a saint. He just, corrected her during the commercial break, but was just very gracious about it. And you can tell that this is a real, genuine niceness because he's remained friends with all of his coworkers. David Letterman, Conan O'Brien, Tom Hanks, Eugene Levy, Robin Williams, Chevy Chase, William Shatner, Diane Keaton, and of course, his bestie, Steve Martin.
Yeah.
All of them love him. He met the SCTV and Second City castmate Dave Thomas in college in 1970, where they began acting together, appearing in Macbeth, where they played Lennox and Banquo, respectively. This caused him to be a part of the infamous Godspell performance in Toronto, where he met the SCTV and SNL geniuses that really created those two shows, including Gilda Radner, Eugene Levy, Paul Schaefer, Andrea Martin, and his future wife, Nancy Dolman, whose brother married Andrea Martin, making SCTV a family affair. Now, as an early member of Second City in Toronto, where many of his Godspell friends were performing, he actually took about a dozen auditions to get into Second City, which means, I don't feel so bad having been drummed out of my first con audition. So I will get in one day. If it takes Martin Short multiple passes, it'll take me multiple passes. Now, he left Second City and joined the cast of SCTV along with his fellow SCTV and SNL cast member, Robin Duke, in 1981. I have a friend whose parents actually just wandered in to the old fire hall to watch a performance, and it was their farewell show. So
oh, my God.
I was like, what I would have done to have been at Robin and Martin's farewell show. One of the few SNL members, cast members, to make an appearance on Mad TV. His first romantic love was Gilda Radner, but honestly, who didn't love Gilda? I mean,
yes,
yeah, everybody loved Gilda. He is a member of the Order of Canada, has a Tony for Little Me, an Emmy for SCTV's Network 90. That's the NBC version of SCTV. 2 Outer Critic Awards for Outstanding Performance, a Primetime Emmy Lifetime Achievement Award, the Independent Spirit Robert Altman Award, the Earl Grey Award, Lifetime Achievement Award for the Canadian Screen Awards, and 3 Canadian Screen Awards for Best Performance. So he's pretty critically recognized for his talents as well.
Yeah.
He continues to tour, doing his 2-man show with Steve Martin to this day, where he is merciless. They keep working together. They also have the show that they co-star in, Only Murderers in the Building, which has won a People's Choice Award in 2021 and 2022, a Primetime Emmy in 2022, a Satellite Award, and an AFI TV Program of the Year just this past year in 2023. So he's nominated for an Emmy for An Evening You Will Forget for the Rest of Your Life with Steve Martin, but they lost to Mulaney. Which, let's be honest, I'm sure Mulaney was really embarrassed by that. He is probably just heartbroken that he beat them, because Mulaney is nothing if not self-effacing. And those are 2 people that I am sure he idolizes.
Yeah.
He's been a success on and off of Broadway, dancing, singing, and remaining a beloved figure to this day. He has a cottage in Muskoka, where he cottages with friends, and his neighbors include Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson, Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn, and Steven Spielberg and Kate Capshaw. And he is my favorite amigo. So yeah, that
He
is
also has
Steve Martin.
he also has a hell of a that was Martin Short.
No, so that was Martin Short. Sorry.
He also has a hell of an autobiography.
He does.
And he reads it, and it's tremendous.
I got the book from my wife, and I listened to the audiobook again on Audible. Not another plug for Audible, but it's on Audible.
Hey, Audible, by the way, if you're looking to sponsor something, the SNL Hall of Fame has a wing that we could use your vast amounts of money on. So talk to us.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably do an entire series all about just SNL alumni biographies read on Audible by those cast members.
Well, I think we should take it downstairs now. Bill Kenney's waiting. He's chomping at the bit, and he's down there with Thomas. So Thomas, take it away, buddy.
JD, Matt, thank you so much for that introduction, and welcome to another episode of the SNL Hall of Fame. Today, we are bringing you comedy royalty, and I'm talking about Bill Kenney, my guest, of course.
Of course.
Hi, Bill. Welcome to the SNL Hall of Fame. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me back.
Yeah,
really
sure thing.
Excited.
Of course, we're talking about Marty Short, comedy royalty.
He's a little bit higher than I am, but yeah.
On the pecking order, you're just below Marty. So, no, we love having you, Bill. Thank you so much. You were a guest for Jason Sudeikis last season, and I like to think, Bill, that your natural charisma is what put Jason Sudeikis in the SNL Hall of Fame. Like, what say you?
I mean, listen, I'm trying to be humble here, but all of the people I've come on this here podcast and promoted are now in the SNL Hall of Fame, including my dear Jan Hooks.
Hooks.
Yeah, very excited when I heard you guys announce that. It's such a great thing to see these people recognized for their great work. Jason probably got on for Ted Lasso and me, but yeah, we'll give me credit too. Jason, call me.
Yes. But Jan, though, like I was super excited when we got the results, and Jan Hooks was in well-deserved, overdue. Bill, I mean, Jan Hooks. Now the SNL Hall of Fame has maybe legitimacy in your eyes. I don't know.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, it's like that favorite player that gets in on the 7th or 8th ballot. I know this was the 3rd ballot, but it was great to see. The only thing, people, please vote for these writers. That would be my only pitch besides Marty tonight. Of course, need more of these writers in. If you've seen a season of SNL that you didn't enjoy, it's because they had bad writers. Period. Right. End of sentence. Put these people in. They're well-deserving.
Exactly. Yep. I think, in my opinion, Jack Handy might be the next one on the list. Hopefully to get in. Jim Downey's in. So that was a little bit of a wrong that's been righted. Yes. We're making progress here, the voters at the SNL Hall of Fame.
Chipping away. That's all you can do.
Absolutely. So today's guest, I'm super excited to talk about Martin Short, Bill. So where did you first become acquainted with Marty? Because before SNL, he was already known in comedy circles. So where did you become acquainted with him?
Probably right around the time that he was on SNL. That was my formative years. I wasn't watching the show at that point, but as similar with Billy Crystal, I'd hear comedy clips on Dr. Demento's show, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but it was a Sunday night show that just did comedy clips. There'd be stand-up clips. There would be clips from SNL, from SCTV. And you'd start to hear stuff like Ed Grimley on there, and I'd wonder where this was coming from, as a 10-year-old or 11-year-old boy. And it all kind of came together when he came to host for the first time. It was kind of all of my worlds colliding. I didn't know a lot of him. A lot of his movies weren't child-oriented at that point. So I hadn't seen him in the movies, but that was probably where I got my start with Marty.
Okay, yeah. So, of course, Martin Short was a cast member on SNL. He was in the Ringer season, as we like to call it, season 10.
Steinbrenner season.
Yeah, it's the Steinbrenner season. Dick Ebersol's last season as producer, he just went and brought in he went big game hunting, basically, and brought in Marty, Billy Crystal, Christopher Guest. He brought Harry Shearer back. Great season. So, Marty on SNL, Bill, you and I... So there was a little discussion, a big discussion. Marty's placement on the Saturday Night Network's cast member countdown, and you and I had a little bit of disagreement there. Marty was 42 on the SNN fan list, and I think that was really high. I actually didn't have Marty ultimately in my top 50, but Bill, my stance has a lot to do with philosophy. Like, try to convince me otherwise.
This is one of the few things that you and I have disagreed on, and this is one of the few things that our friend John Schneider and I have disagreed on. I understand where quantity counts for something. If you're on the show for 10 years and you've done very solid work, you're going to be higher than somebody who is on for 1 year. But bang for your buck, Marty on there for one season was phenomenal. Yes, Christopher Guest was a big deal as well. He didn't have that great of an SNL career. There's not a lot you can point to. His Weekend Update, SNL News, was not that great. He wrote some good stuff, but it was basically the Billy and Marty show. And for better or worse, a lot of good people didn't get a lot of airtime. Julie Louis-Dreyfus, Mary Gross, Jim Belushi. But for what was there, these two carried the show, made it relevant again, I think really for the first time since Eddie left full-time, Eddie Murphy. So, and he was highly quotable. He had these incredible characters that he had brought from SCTV, which is something you wouldn't see today. You probably know this. Many of the fans probably know this. But SNL now owns the characters. Like if you bring a character, this was around the 90s that they started this. Dana Carvey's talked about this on his podcast, where he brought the church lady, so he owns the church lady. NBC SNL owns the characters now. So they wouldn't let somebody like Marty come in today and not give up these characters. But he came fully formed from his SCTV time with Ed Grimley, with what else did he do? Irving Cohen, which was one of my favorites, the Bouncy C composer, Nathan Thurm, Jackie Rogers Jr. He had brought all of those from his time as SCTV, and it made SNL big again.
He was very well equipped to do sketch comedy, to do SNL. He was so well equipped. I remember watching SCTV in reruns. Of course, when it aired, I was a small child. I wasn't watching SCTV, but I was lucky enough to catch up with it in reruns. And what a group! Like, we haven't on this podcast. I mean, it makes sense, but we haven't really talked a lot about SCTV. But Rick Moranis, John Candy, Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara, Bill. Like, were you able to watch SCTV later? After
I was too young as well, but I can recall. I believe it was after Late Night with Letterman and then Conan, where NBC started rerunning those SCTVs. And that was kind of mind-blowing. This is pre-YouTube, pre-internet. So to see these things, all of these people had started to become big in their own ways. Catherine O'Hara was big. Obviously, Marty and John Candy were doing their thing. To go back and be able to watch their origin stories on a show that was similar to SNL, but not the same. And then obviously through the years, kind of seeing the fabric that's laid these people together. Marty's really the only one that carried over as a cast member, I believe.
Right.
Catherine O'Hara almost did.
Almost.
Famously.
Michael O'Donoghue, we can blame, I think, for her not being a cast member.
Yes. She walked out of the first meeting after he spray painted the wall, and we got Robin Duke instead, which was fine. Mm-hmm. But so it was kind of, I can't imagine being an adult at that time who was a hardcore comedy fan, having watched SCTV, and then seeing Marty come over and kind of, worlds colliding. So, very interesting.
Very interesting. And here at the SNL Hall of Fame, we love other sketch comedy shows, especially being like rooted. Jamie Dew is from Toronto. So this SNL Hall of Fame is like rooted in Canada. Lorne Michaels is a Canadian. So, the ties there to SCTV as far as cast members and comedic voice and everything can't be denied. And Marty specifically as a cast member on SNL, I'll give him this. I mean, for his one season, you couldn't look away when he's on screen. And that's throughout his entire career. One of the things that sticks out to me is you couldn't look away when Marty was on screen. Specifically, Bill, the first sketch or the first episode, or one of the first sketches that we saw Marty in that first episode, synchronized swimming. Oh. So I want to talk about that real quick. I know this happened when Marty was a cast member, but still, like an all-time classic sketch that Marty was in.
Officially, it's got, like zero acceptance.
I don't swim.
Lawrence doesn't swim. So, no, of course not. Nobody is just going to walk up and hand us a gold medal, especially since men's synchro isn't even in the '88 Olympics yet.
But that's okay, because we could use the time. Because I'm not that strong a swimmer.
But, that just means that...
When they would do, which I miss, when they would do these SNL Best of Sports, this was one of the weird ones that they kind of shoved in there. They'd have the baseball and the football and all the things, but they had to get synchronized swimming on all these best ofs because it was just so wacky. Them pointing at each other, I know you, and they were trying to get into the 1984 Olympics or 1988 Olympics because they had missed the cut for 1984. And they were trying to get this ridiculous swimming exercise into the Olympics. And Marty was just playing this very innocent, childish character with Christopher Guest. Mm-hmm. And it was so fantastic.
Marty wasn't much of a swimmer in the sketch. And I loved that you're right, it had the Christopher Guest mockumentary style, which is always welcome. It's amazing. It was around the time that This Is Spinal Tap was out, and just what an amazing movie that was. So synchronized swimming, for as much as I said about Marty, and it's just, like I said, a philosophical thing as far as where he stands as an SNL cast member of all time. But he was in an amazing sketch from that era. And again, you were right. He brought over Ed Grimley, Jackie Rogers Jr. So he did make his mark as a cast member on SNL. So there's no denying that, Bill.
Yeah, I think if you could come on and do what Marty and Billy did, even if it's just for that 1 year, I think that counts. Are you going to put them ahead of people like Will Ferrell and Phil Hartman? No, obviously not. And they have the pedigree, and they went on to do great things afterwards. So even though it's just this tiny part of their resume, I think Marty is deserving to be considered in the top 50 of all-time cast for sure.
And I do respect that, and I do love Marty, so I'm really excited for this episode. And he's not eligible for the SNL Hall of Fame as a cast member, given SNL Hall of Fame rules, but we are talking about him today as a host, 4-time host, Martin Short. So, Bill, his first hosting stint, season 12, episode 6. Only 6 episodes into that new golden age of SNL, December 6, 1986. This is a theme with Marty, hosting like a Christmassy episode here. He's hosting with his fellow amigos, Steve Martin and Chevy Chase, promoting Three Amigos. Before we get into the episode, please tell me, Three Amigos is one of my favorite comedies. How do you feel about Three Amigos? I love it.
So underrated. It got lambasted at the time as not being that great. And I think it's one of those movies like Tommy Boy that gets crushed by critics, had high expectations because of the wattage of comedy people in this movie, and has aged like a fine wine. I still like to go back and watch it every few years. And it's great. I mean, to see these 3 unbelievable comedic giants in one movie together was fantastic.
And it was equal amongst the 3 of them. I wouldn't say there was a star. All 3 of them, that's what's amazing about that movie. The fact that it was hilarious, but all 3 of them stood out equally, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they're all kind of at the height of their power, right? I mean, Chevy has just done the vacation movies, and Steve is Steve. He's been around for about 10 or 15 years on the stand-up circuit. He's starting to make really great movies like Roxanne and things like that. And then Marty is doing his thing. So yeah, for these three, leave your egos at the door. Let's all do this together and make a great movie. It was a great thing. And only Lorne could pull three people like that together and do that.
Yes, absolutely. And this first episode was interesting. We don't often see three people hosting together. There's sometimes two. We see two. A famous Alec Baldwin, Kim Basinger hosting duo that we all remember. But three is really quite the juggling act. Like, how do you think they did as far as juggling the three of them as hosts in this episode?
It's a really interesting time capsule. It's one of the first things I wrote down when I went back and rewatched this episode. This is one of the things that he kind of carried over from the Ebersol era, Lorne did, to have these multi-hosts who, now these three made sense together. They were obviously promoting the movie that was coming out, but, Lorne had just done Angelica Houston and Billy Martin the previous May, like these weird pairings and not having them all in the same sketches together. There's only a couple of instances where the three of them are on screen together, other than the monologue and the cold open. So it's not something that we would see today. When we saw, as we'll get to in a little bit, when Steve and Marty came back last year, they were in most of the sketches together. I think there's only one sketch where they're not paired up. So they're kind of working their own section of the street, so to speak. So it's really kind of an interesting thing that I don't think we would see today.
No, and they did that at least a couple of other times, if I recall correctly, that season. Joe Montana and
Walter Payton, another famous one where they weren't in sketches together.
Right.
It's just so weird. Why have two hosts if they're not going to be working together?
Yeah, it's very weird. I'd be curious to see how the current cast and show would handle two hosts now, but there's a reason why they haven't really gone to that well much lately.
Yeah, I mean, the last couple of really famous ones would be Tina and Amy, and then obviously Marty and Steve, and a lot of pairing together. So yeah, it would be interesting.
Yeah, so here, start off, cold open, the Gerald Ford Clinic. Marty, Bill, does such a great pratfall. Out of the pratfalls that happen, of course, Chevy's the master at this, but Marty shocked me with his commitment to this pratfall.
Oh, he went all in. Just went from the door to the American flag to the chair. Like, Steve's was really low key. Obviously, Chevy comes in to finish it off, as he always did. But yeah, you're right. Marty is the star of this cold open with his Stumblebums Anonymous. And imagine being Kevin Nealon, who is the only featured player on the show this year, being with these three icons. He's the only cast member in the cold open with them. So.
Yeah, be taking mental notes if I'm on screen. Yeah, if I'm in a sketch with Steve and Chevy and Marty, I'm taking mental notes of what they're doing and what's
Pinching
going
myself.
on. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. So that was a fun cold open. The monologue, they play on the dynamic, and we'll see this throughout Marty's history on the show. It's the dynamic that they've continued for years, with Marty being less than compared to the other two, especially Steve. He says his name, and Steve and Chevy kind of point at themselves like, you already know who I am. So I thought that was a fun dynamic kind of right away.
It is fun, and it is strange that they continue to do that to this day, where he is on the equal plane with somebody like Steve Martin. At this point, even though he was known, he probably is a tick or two lower than their wattage. I don't know that there's anything you would point to. SCTV was kind of a deep cut, as we were talking about. There was the one season of SNL, but, Steve and Chevy are bona fide comedic movie stars. So, yeah, it is funny that they could. And then, of course, the back pills jokes, which would never fly today.
No. Oh, my gosh. Yes. 1986, everyone.
Oh, gotta love it.
Yes, I love it. And the monologue was actually more of a Steve Martin showcase. Which makes sense. He was probably, well, he and Chevy, you're right. I think they were on equal playing field, but Steve was given the showcase here with the monologue. But Marty does his Katharine Hepburn impression to motivate Steve, which I love. Marty doing Katharine Hepburn in old Hollywood voices and stuff. That's right up my alley.
You are being ridiculous. What would Katharine Hepburn say at a moment like this? Can you imagine what she would say?
No.
She'd say, listen to me, mister. I'm telling you that you've done this 1,000 times before, darling, and you'll do it again. Why do you ever question it? So I want you to look fear in the eye and to say, to hell with you. I think I'll survive. Thank you very much.
You can do it, Steve.
Love it. Love it. Yes. And then, of course, they're sitting at the stage playing checkers while Steve does his thing. This was more of a Steve. I think people were more excited about Steve because he hadn't been on the show other than a cameo during the Ebersol era in, 6 years? Mm-hmm. So it had been a long time. He was right behind Buck Henry as far as appearances at that point. So to bring him back, it was really kind of a big deal. That was probably, if you put yourself in a time machine, that would be the person that everybody was most excited about seeing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Fun monologue, even though Marty has just a little bit in it. It was a really fun monologue. Are there any sketches that you first want to talk about that really stood out to you during this episode?
Well, Eggshell Family was fantastic. And this is one of the few times we do get a crossover with two of the hosts together interacting with each other, as opposed to the British customs where they're just kind of, doing the parade sketches that we're so used to now. But this was a sketch with Steve and Kevin and Jan, and getting to see them work with Kevin and Jan was fantastic. And basically it's just about, they're so afraid to bring up the most innocuous thing. The phone is ringing. Should I get the phone? I don't know. Oh, it's Bob. Bob is looking for Dad. What should I tell him?
What do I do?
Stall him.
Okay. Hi, Ray. So? He asked if this was a bad time. What should I tell him? That it was? It wasn't?
And it just kind of escalates from there. And yeah, this is a great showcase for Marty, and to see him work with these newer cast members who go on to be icons, and of course, Steve.
Yeah, I like this one. Marty is so fun to watch on screen. It was so fun to see their different variations and the different versions that each person in the sketch had, as far as their version of walking on eggshells.
Right.
So yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and it was awesome to see Marty. You're right, work with Jan Hooks, work with Kevin Nealon, and that's what I noticed throughout this episode and throughout a lot of these episodes is I'm seeing Marty on screen with holy crap, yeah, Jan Hooks, Steve Martin. It's right there, and we might get to it, but Eric Idle. There's just all this comedy royalty that Marty is being able to play with in his hosting SNL stint.
I mean, we talk about this all the time, that why do we want alumni to come back? Yes, seeing somebody like Kate McKinnon come back was wonderful in December, but it's been recent. To see different eras of a show that's spanned now almost 50 years, to see somebody who was on the show in 1984 come back, even in 1986, that was still, because the show had changed so much in those couple of years, to have them come back and interact with these newer cast members who eventually become your favorites too. So you get to see this playground. That's what we look for. That's, when you're a super fan of SNL, that's what you want to see.
Yeah, it's so rewarding. It reminds me of seeing Phil Hartman and Will Ferrell in a sketch together. How amazing is that to see those two, right? Eddie Murphy coming back and be able to play with the current cast. That's what, as SNL fans, those are the rewarding moments, Bill.
That's all we want.
Yeah, right. Just give us those little rewarding moments, and we'll stick with you, Lauren. We're still hooked. The sketch that I highlighted really was The Devil and Ed Grimley. I've talked to some people who are kind of on Ed Grimley, but I personally love watching Marty do Ed Grimley. Marty can do anything on screen, it seems like, and I'm just captivated. What's he going to do next? But this one in particular, again, Marty's playing with John Lovitz and one of John Lovitz's signature characters. I think there's a pretty cool premise and a funny payoff in this sketch. And I like the Ed Grimley character because Marty sells it so hard, and his movements and his voice. Bill, like, where do you stand on Ed Grimley and this sketch in particular?
I've had an interesting road with Ed Grimley. When you're younger, you appreciate this kind of physical humor, and then I kind of got tired of seeing him come back time after time, and it's kind of a one-note sketch if you look at it too closely. But again, as you're saying, as I've gotten older, as gone back and watched these things over and over again, yes, his physicality is amazing. Probably why he hasn't done it the last couple of times he's hosted, because he's jumping on everything, he's having things fall on him, and it is great, and it is great to see him with Lovitz, as you say.
And so I'm going to make you this offer: a $50 gift certificate at the department store of your choice. In return,
Yes?
for a consideration, very small, payable at a later date.
Oh, what a fascinating proposition. Do you mind if I just ponder for one fleeting second?
As you wish.
Oh, give me a break! What to do? I've never had that kind of money, you know. And the idea of spending all that money in gifts is just the best. I could buy a new pencil case for Cousin Lamar, and possibly those sleeping blinders that Uncle Basil has been eyeing. Oh, it'd just be the best. Oh, what am I talking about?
You know, the payoff is that he wants to sell his soul for a $50 gift certificate because he can't buy Christmas presents. Yeah, to be able to see these two work together was fantastic. So
yeah, and he ends up warding off the devil with a Pat Sajak photo. Of course, he's a huge fan of Pat Sajak. Bill, some sketches have lean on writing and clever premises and clever dialogue. Some sketches lean on characters and performance, and to me, this is the latter.
Absolutely.
Which I don't mind, but this is like a performance-based sketch. And if there's one person, probably maybe in comedy, who I just like seeing performing the hell out of something, it's Martin Short.
Yes, definitely. This is something that if he had been on the show in the 90s, they would have done every other week and beaten it into the ground. So that's
there would have been an Ed Grimley movie.
Oh, yeah. And there was a cartoon.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, he is somebody who can pull this off. And you're right. This is the kind of thing that we don't get a lot these days. I think there was a lot of backlash from how much they would trot out characters like this in the 90s. But if you bring this out when he hosts every 10 years, I'm okay with that.
Right. Yeah. Likewise. And Marty not in a ton. He definitely made an impact when he was on screen, but not in a ton of sketches. I mean, they had to serve Steve Martin and Chevy, and Steve and Chevy and Marty each, it seemed like, each of them got their own showcase sketches. Right. So like with Marty, it was the Ed Grimley sketch. Chevy had one, I know Steve. So they were all kind of in sketches by themselves, it seemed like one sketch each by themselves, and then they were in sketches together. Marty was also in the British Customs sketch. Do you have anything to say? And then Marty made kind of a brief appearance, but do you have anything to say about this one?
It's a very brief appearance. I mean, it was great to see Eric Idle as well, as you alluded to. And again, to see him work with Dana Carvey, who was just kind of bursting onto the scene at this point and had become the first star of this next golden era. So to see them work together, there wasn't a lot to this other than, they kept opening up these innocuous things like checkerboards or chess sets and chocolate candy. What do we have here, And Marty doesn't have a lot to do in this, but it is a lot of fun, and especially to bring now a fourth comedic giant into this particular episode was a great thing.
Marty did well in this episode. Like I said, he had to share the spotlight with Steve Martin and Chevy Chase, but I think he was pretty memorable. The Eggshell Family, Ed Grimley, he had memorable pratfall in the cold open. So I think Marty did well for himself. Pretty good first outing, especially considering he had to share the spotlight 10 years, almost to the day, after his first appearance as a host. Season 22, episode 8. That was in December of 96. He was one of the last it was a streak of 5 former cast member hosts in a row. So Marty was the last one. Bill, you had Dana, Chris Rock, Robert Downey Jr., Phil Hartman, and Martin Short. As an SNL geek, isn't that the kind of thing we live for too?
Oh, I remember this to this day. Like, this was such an incredible streak of 5 episodes of these giants. You know, Chris Rock, to have him come back after, you know, his questionable tenure on the show. Robert Downey Jr., who had an even more questionable tenure on the show. But to have these 5 amazing alumni come back for 5 weeks in a row, 5 episodes in a row, was amazing. And to button it up with Marty was such a great thing.
Yeah, and Marty by himself is the host. And boy, oh boy, did this live up to every expectation that I think we all had, Bill. I'm so excited. This episode was... I knew that I remember loving this episode, and I always held this episode in high regard, but rewatching it for this podcast just filled me with so much joy. So this monologue, first of all, it ranks high up there in SNL history.
And I'm thinking, you see, about how SNL has now been on the air for 22 years. Roller coaster ride, please. You know, I mean, at first it was good and very hip, you know, and then it got bad. But the show was so hip that even though it was bad, people would still talk about it as if it was good. And then it got good again, but it wasn't as hip. Then it kind of got bad again. Now it became very hip to talk about how bad and unhip it was. And then one night I'm home and I turn to my wife Nancy and say, "Hey, honey, let's turn on Saturday Night Live and just kind of wallow in its unhip badness." And their hosting is Robin Williams, you know, and, "Oh, New York, what a town. Town sounds like clown. Frown. Oh, don't frown at me, Mary. You'll upset Mr. Happy." You know.
He talks about the show having been on the air for 22 years, and it was good, then it got bad, then it was good but not hip, and then it just continues on, and they cut to Lauren and Marty at dinner, and he's choking, and Lauren's on the phone. Am I okay to perform the Heimlich? You know, and eventually this is how he gets Marty to host, because he saves his life, and of course it wasn't even food in his mouth; it was pantyhose, and yeah. And the joke of it being that the show was good and then bad, and this was only in this season.
Yeah, like, right, yeah. And that's season 1, yeah.
Yeah.
But Marty really did take us through a perfect summation of the first few years of SNL. I was keeping track. I was following the beats, and I'm like, you know what? That's like really accurate.
It really is. Yeah.
It really is, yeah. It was supposed to be funny, but it was also like very accurate. And I love when the show gets super self-referential at times, and this monologue sure did that.
I love it, and we also get a rare look at the upper deck. You know, we've gone backstage a million times, but they have the risers set up for him to, as he starts to do the song and dance portion of the monologue, which it's now a third part of the monologue that we're seeing here, and getting to see kind of a part of SNL that we don't get to see a lot, other than a cut to commercial. Right. So that was a lot of fun too.
That was so much fun. By the way, great Robin Williams impression.
Yes.
By Marty. Yes. He snuck that in.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
He was always great with that.
Yeah. Overall, my opinion, 10 out of 10 monologue.
10 out of 10 for sure. Yes.
Yeah.
This is what we look for.
Yeah, this was so good. And then the first sketch is the debut of a classic Celebrity Jeopardy, Bill.
Amazing. And all the bones are there for what becomes an all-time SNL sketch that we see over and over again. The only difference between this one and future ones is Sean Connery's not as mean to Alex Trebek.
Yeah.
Daryl Hammond's Sean Connery. But other than that, we've got Norm as Burt Reynolds and Daryl as Sean Connery. And then Marty as Jerry Lewis, who does a fantastic Jerry Lewis.
Don't have to pay the Jerry Lewis.
Cannonball and maybe...
Wait. It sounds like you might have the right answer. Did you say cannon?
Cannon.
Now, say ball.
Wall.
Put them together.
Cannonball and maybe navy. Yeah!
People may not even remember who Jerry Lewis is at this point, but he was so big at this point with his telethon and his movie career and his work with Dean Martin. So to have him come in and do this crazy over-the-top ersatz Jerry Lewis was so fantastic. And, of course, Will Ferrell as Alex Trebek.
Yep. All the makings just like of what's going to become a classic recurring sketch. Martin, fun, goofy, cartoonish Jerry Lewis. Because Jerry Lewis, he had a rough edge to him in, his personal life and real life. He was kind of a surly guy, but he played this goofy character in movies. So that's what Marty was doing, was like the goofy Jerry Lewis that you saw in those old movies. And he did it so perfectly. I think this was something that he used to do on SCTV as well, Bill.
I believe so, yeah. And Jerry Lewis is one of those impressions, kind of like Lorne, that everybody has one. You and I have trotted out our Lornes. We won't do that again right now. But yeah, I think everybody kind of had a Jerry Lewis at that point. Earlier on in SNL, they had Eddie and Joe in a Jerry Lewis match-off. So everybody had this, but Marty's was perfection as far as the comedic side of Jerry Lewis.
Yeah, and this is the sketch where we get the famous S-words category pick that came from the very first Celebrity Jeopardy. Yes. Martin Short, man, just part of SNL history, being in this first sketch and helping to carry this first sketch. Martin was the star of this. Like, Norm did great as Bert. Daryl, of course, did great as Sean Connery, but Martin Short, popped more than any of them in this sketch.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we'll see both Norm and Daryl come back, obviously, in a lot of other segments. And Norm's Burt Reynolds has better moments than this, and Daryl's Sean Connery has better moments than this. But yes, you're right. This is Marty's showcase, and getting to see him perform it was fantastic.
Yeah, just a wonderful first sketch of the night. What else stood out to you in this Marty's second hosting gig?
Well, we get a lot of his recurring characters. We have him with Barbara Walters, done by the impeccable Sherry O'Terry.
The incident that occurred when you were invited by Quincy Jones to participate in the recording session for We Are the World.
That's painfully correct, Barbara.
Yes. Well, Jackie, what happened?
Long story short, performing a show in Laughlin, Nevada, if you will. I had just killed with 2 encores of a medley of songs that had not been nominated. Got on a plane, arrived at the studio 5 minutes late, and Q had locked the door. But you see, that is very Q. Quincy's that way. It's funny.
Him doing his Jackie Rogers Jr., which is another one that kind of grew on me over time. He's this albino singer whose father was very famous, and he tells the story to Barbara Walters about getting locked out of We Are the World, so he went to Denny's with some other stragglers. And then they cut to him doing an embarrassing moment, as Barbara Walters was always apt to do, where he did a drunken holiday special in 1977 and humped Miss Piggy.
That's
only
that moment,
Marty could pull this off.
Absolutely. That moment with Jackie Rogers Jr. violating Miss Piggy, just I remember that. That's one of the very memorable moments of SNL around that time period for me, is that visual of Jackie Rogers Jr. drunk in 1978 and hitting on Miss Piggy. And that was perfect. And this was especially interesting to me, Bill. We talked about Marty being able to play with the current cast and whatnot. Sherry O'Terry always reminded me a little bit of Martin Short.
Yes.
Just in her performance, she could act goofy. So it was awesome to see them together in this sketch, and both doing such a great. Sherry was awesome in this. She's always done a great Barbara Walters, but this was just such a fun sketch because the two of them just played with each other so well.
Yeah, I mean, this is, again, what we were talking about. You want to see what they can do with the current cast. This is kind of a silver era of SNL. It's really the second season that they've all been working together. So they're still, I mean, they've found their footing, but they're getting better and better as they go along. And Will and Sherry have really kind of stepped up at this point. And so to see Marty and Sherry working together was fantastic. Yes, they do have similar energies, and it was a lot of fun.
For sure. Aside from the monologue, I think the Barbara Walters special with Jackie Rogers Jr. was my favorite sketch of the night.
I'd have to agree.
Yeah. He also did an Ed Grimley in Heaven, which was cool. It was like a nice use of a pre-tape. They mixed a pre-tape in with the live element, some light visual effects, Chevy Chase cameo. Did this Ed Grimley win you over 10 years after the last one? So it's not like it was oversaturation.
There's no real need.
Well, why don't we do it the old-fashioned way? What do you say?
Sure.
Name?
Ed Grimley.
Ed Grimley. And education?
Well, you see, I'm hoping to go to night school and get some sort of diploma.
Business administration, then.
All right.
All right, moving on. Let's see. Marital status?
American.
No, goof boy. Have you ever been married?
No.
Yeah, I was okay with it. I think this was kind of where I turned the corner as far as liking Ed Grimley again. And seeing Chevy come back was fun at this point. Kind of unexpected. You can hear it from the audience reaction. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I was fine with this. It was a different take on it. I mean, that's really what we want from these recurring characters, whether or not they're on the show every week or whether it's a host coming back and doing somebody. Give us a different take. And we also see that with the Roxbury guys,
right?
Which he is part of. They're finding it hard at this point to do something different. And they find a little bit of a different lane. Marty playing, I guess, a refugee from a European country. I don't know.
Yeah. Middle Eastern country.
Middle Eastern country,
maybe.
yeah. But they bring him over and they make him into a Roxbury guy. So that was kind of a different take on that as well. So
yeah, Marty was able to make a Roxbury sketch watchable for me. I think Marty's rendition and then the Jim Carrey version are the two Roxbury sketches that I kind of liked. The other ones, I don't know, diminishing returns for me, but props to Marty for making a Roxbury sketch pretty fun to me, I would say. So that's a feather in his cap for me, Bill.
See, I was a big Roxbury guy.
Okay.
This was a fun thing to imitate, a la Michael Scott on The Office. This was a fun thing to do at a party, pretend that you were one of the Roxbury guys and tilt your head. So I always like these, but yeah, Marty elevated it just a little bit more. Like you said, this one and the Jim Carrey one stand out for sure.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to me to see somebody like Marty or comedy legend come and like partake in the SNL of the time. And being with recurring characters and joining in on those sketches, whether it's like Jim Carrey being in a cheerleader sketch, Marty being in a Roxbury sketch, I always enjoy seeing that.
That might be the saddest part about not having as many recurring characters in modern SNL. It's not that we love these characters so much as it is, like you said, to see these hosts come in and play in that sandbox with the current cast and get to see their take on them.
Yeah. And there was one other kind of interesting little nugget for me in this night. The last sketch was the Tinseltown Tattler with Pinky Nye. And I didn't totally connect with it, but I couldn't help but wonder if there was a seedling for Jiminy Glick in here.
Thomas, we're on the same wavelength.
Really?
That's exactly what I wrote down. Was this the proto Jiminy Glick? Yeah. This is about 2 or 3 years before he gets his Comedy Central show. There is some of that there. He's not doing as much of the voice. This is fun. It's a little kind of one note with Molly. Keep cutting back to the heart-to-heart references, which is such a deep cut even in 1996 right. that you're referencing the show from the early 80s and Molly getting triggered by the mere mention of Stephanie Hart was kind of fun, but yeah, I don't know. There's not a lot here other than, yes, maybe the seedlings for what would come.
I felt so good after rewatching this. Totally in a good mood. Afterward, we had like a classic monologue. Celebrity Jeopardy was classic. I loved the Barbara Walters special. Ed Grimley, which I did enjoy this concept in this sketch. Just a fun overall episode, Bill. That's why we watch SNL, to have fun. Marty delivered.
That's it. Now he's done 2 December episodes. The first one is an all-time Christmas classic, in my opinion, but not just because of Marty. You know, there's a lot of other things going on. This one is a lot because of Marty. Mm-hmm. And it's so great to have, to be able to see him kind of shine on his own.
Yeah, I agree. The next one, you said all-time Christmas classic with the first one. In my opinion, this one is not just an all-time Christmas classic. For me, I consider this an all-time classic SNL episode.
That's
so
fair.
This one happened in December of 2012, season 38. Gosh, just so much here for me, Bill. Like, this is honestly, especially in that era, this is one of the better episodes from that era and one of my personal favorite episodes of all time, just for me personally.
This was interesting timing. Talk about time capsule episodes. Sure. We've got the Sandy Hook shooting the day before, which is why we get this very sad opening with the New York Children's Choir. But then we just kind of leave the sadness there, and we move into the really funny Marty episode. And like you said, there is a lot here. You talked about the 96 monologue being one of your favorites. This is one of my favorites.
Absolutely.
This is one of my favorite monologues of all time.
Well, it's Christmas time, and there's love in the air. An embrace for the glance, or coquettish advance, catches you unaware. It's the most amorous time of the year. It's the most promiscuous time of the year. All those hotties about make your trousers stick out like a red-nosed reindeer. It's the most lascivious time of the year.
We get everything we want. We get all the backstage fun. We get the llama. We get Abraham Lincoln. We get the dancing girls. We get amazing cameos from all different eras.
Bill, we get cameos from Paul Schaefer, Kristen Wiig, Jimmy Fallon, Tom Hanks,
right?
Samuel L. Jackson, Tina Fey, Lorne Michaels. We get cameos just out the wazoo.
Out the wazoo. And how about the not knowing what these new girls, as he calls them, as he's walking backstage with 3 all-time classic cast members now in Cecily, 80, and Kate. They had just been on the show for a couple of months, so it was great to see kind of what we didn't know what we were going to get from them right before he goes into all these amazing cameos.
Yeah, there was a funny moment at the beginning, and sometimes I can't tell with Marty if it's like something's rehearsed or if he's just really good about making it seem off the cuff. But when he was trying to figure out how to sit on the piano, I don't know if that was like something that was in the script or if that was just Marty kind of being goofy Marty, whatever. But that one, that got me. That little bit got me.
That was great, yes. And yeah, like you said, Paul Schaefer, seeing him come back to the show, I don't know how long it had been at this point that we hadn't seen him. So to have him come back and an OG, not ready for primetime, featured player and band member from the golden era. Yeah, this was fantastic.
Yeah, I hope people appreciated it in 2012 that Paul Schaefer made a cameo. Hope people realize what a big part of SNL history he is. So I hope people did appreciate it in that time.
I feel like at this point, he had been on Letterman for 25 years, so I think part of that had faded into the ether. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I hope so too. I hope it wasn't just us.
Right, just us nerds, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
The one of my other favorite moments in this was when he was talking to Tina Fey and Lorne, and Marty held up the mistletoe. And of course you think like, oh, he's gonna like try to kiss Tina, but then he goes in for a deep, passionate kiss with Lorne.
Yes, and the look on Lorne's face, even though he probably knew it was coming,
sure,
his face was priceless. Yeah, this was a great moment. And do we mention Samuel Jackson? Like, he's wandering around backstage too. Like,
yeah, just
unbelievable. Yeah.
I'm a sucker for backstage sketches.
Every time.
So yeah, every time. I'm a sucker for when we get to see, like you'd mentioned, Lincoln, the llama, and the showgirls, the dancing girls. So this was just another, like I mentioned, the monologue from the previous episode was a classic 10 out of 10. This one is too. So he's turned in 2 consecutive classic 10 out of 10 no notes monologues. What a start to this episode, Bill.
Unreal. Yes.
So a lot of good stuff here, a lot of great stuff. It's like I said, this is like an all-time favorite episode of mine. What sticks out to you first from this episode?
Well, I think we have to talk about the royal family doctor. We've got Marty doing his great British accent, meeting with Bill Hader to talk. Or no, he wasn't the doctor. I'm sorry. He was the representative for the royal family, and Bill Hader was playing the doctor. And he was explaining that this was going to be a little bit different because, you know, it involved the royal vagina and the proper names that it could be called. You can call it Thomas English Muffin. You know, I knew I was coming out with Thomas, so I had to point that one out. And watching Bill Hader not try to break this entire sketch was so great.
I'm sorry, must we call it the royal
Well, the only other acceptable terms that I know of is the governess, the kingmaker, her Downton Abbey, the Channel, Dame Judi Dench, Piccadilly Cervix, and Thomas's English Muffin.
Stick with the royal
I thought you might. Moving on.
And again, like seeing a soon-to-be all-time classic SNL cast member in Bill Hader, #1 on the Saturday Night Network all-time cast member list, playing with Martin Short. Like, this was just such a great... I think it's great that he takes... I wish he came back more, but I think it's great that he takes this much time off because we get to see him play in so many different eras, right?
I agree.
So, this was great. So many funny jokes. Something like this can get really tiresome, and he didn't let it get that way. So
No, this is he can clearly work in British humor, because this was such, not just because there were British accents, but just the back and forth, the quick, witty back and forth between him and Bill Hader, the cadence, all that stuff. Like, this played like something from Monty Python, and it was just... so good. Marty showing his chops. The way Marty had Bill Hader in the palm of his hand. Like, it's part of me thinks Marty saw Bill about to break, and he's like, I'm going to get this guy to break.
Yes. Yeah. We've seen this in recent times with Kate McKinnon and Billie Eilish, a couple of their sketches, where it was obvious if you just kept poking the bear, you were going to make him crack. That was what Marty was going for sure.
Yeah. So the royal family doctor, in my opinion, one of the great, like, lost sketches. Like, I don't see people referencing this sketch as far as like really outstanding sketches from this era, but after rewatching it, I have to put it up there. Like, this is a really fun one from that era to me.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and we're off and running with this episode.
Yeah. This comes on the heels of Marty and Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin appears in this episode. What an event this episode was.
Crazy. Yes.
Yeah, Tony Bennett Christmas. So Marty plays Jerry Bennett. Of course, Alec playing Tony Bennett. Just, not a ton here, but Marty and Alec do have good chemistry. So it was nice to see. I think they got off to a good start in this episode with that. But we see how great Alec is as Tony Bennett, and Marty, for the most part, was able to match with him. And just seeing Marty play with another, like, all-time great SNL host was fun.
My little brother's a heck of a hugger. We used to call him the barnacle, because you couldn't lose him if you tried. I just love hugs. They're like kisses for your body. Jerry, you look great.
Thank you.
That suit is so sharp, it must have been made by Ginsu knives.
Thanks, Tony. I
had a heap of Cole's cash that I was about to expire. The trousers have a hole in one of the pockets, but it comes in handy for long bus rides.
Yeah, it is a very quick Tony Bennett sketch. But we do get Jay Farrow as Kanye, pre-crazy Kanye, maybe.
He might have been in the throes of it by then.
Yeah, he might have been on the way. But yeah, it's fun because they're trying to make him push this suppository that they're trying to hawk, and he's not having any of it. Yeah, it's a lot of fun stuff here.
Yeah, good start. Where do you want to go next with this episode?
I mean, we have to talk about You're a Rat Bastard, Charlie Brown. Like, this is one of those fantastic impression pre-tapes. We get a lot of great stuff here with Bill Hader as Al Pacino as Charlie Brown and Kate as Edie Falco as Lucy. But Marty as Larry David as Linus is the star of this to me. He doesn't have a lot of lines, but he gets to really show off what a great Larry David impression he has.
It's Charlie Brown by way of Brooklyn with Larry David as Linus.
I don't know, this whole Christmas thing, it's a whole to-do, with the parties and the presents and the decorating. It's not for me.
What do you mean Christmas is not for you? Don't tell me it's not for you. If I say it's for you, then it's for you.
Oh, so I'm just supposed to accept what you say? You know what? You don't know what the hell you're talking about.
You, Linus.
Me?
Yeah.
Why don't you go yourself, Charlie Brown?
And even gets to put the button on the sketch by saying it's pretty good.
Yeah, it was probably fun for Marty because I think he and Larry are friends.
Yeah.
Right, so it's probably fun for Marty to do his Larry David impression. That was good. I love the reactions of the kids in the audience too, showing like horrified kids. Like, what the hell are we? Yeah. Do they have to remind you that this adult themed like New York kind of mob, loosely mob kind of Peanuts play is being shown to children,
right?
Which I loved.
Like like you said, the cuts to the children and Kate really showing her chops when she pulls the football away. It's soft grass. Don't be upset. Like, it's just yeah. There's a lot of fun stuff here. Gotta love an impression of an impression of an impression. So
very meta.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think this is probably the sketch. Well, maybe not, but this might be the sketch that people do remember and hold maybe most fondly from this episode.
I would think so. Yeah. This probably has been replayed quite a bit.
And if we're covering an episode, Bill, that has a what up with that, I have to talk about it. I will not turn down a chance to talk about my just sheer love of what up with that as a recurring sketch. It's like, to me, the most joyful thing that I've ever seen on SNL. Yes. Honestly, like what up with that. So we have a rendition of what up with that. Marty comes on as one of his major characters.
He's Jackie Rogers Jr. Yeah, and it's really one of the few times that we get somebody else talking a lot in a what up with that sketch other than Keenan, right? Yeah. The three people who are sitting to Keenan's right, the first person gets a line or two until Keenan breaks into song. But Marty comes on to do his Jackie Rogers Jr., and he gets the floor for a good 30 seconds, which is more than anybody ever gets.
It's so great to be here. Interesting story about my late father. I was...
What's up with that? What's up with that?
So I think that's kind of a tip of the hat, the small hat, to Marty. Keenan kind of giving it up and letting him run wild with his Jackie Rogers Jr.
Yeah, and then of course DeAndre Cole saying, "All right, enough of you. Here's
right, yeah, that's enough.
Let's go back here." So yeah, a nice surprise appearance by Jackie Rogers Jr. on What Up With That. So in my opinion, like we would talk about fun, and I watch SNL because of fun. Like this episode, this What Up With That is part of what made this episode so much darn fun.
Yeah. This was up there for me too.
Yeah. Should we talk about the next sketch? Just go through the whole damn episode? Because I liked the next sketch too with Marty and Fred Armisen.
Yeah, I mean, this is old friends, and this is the kind of slice of life sketch that we are aching for a lot of times in modern SNL. And this is something that they really didn't even do a lot at this point in 2012. So it's just kind of an awkward conversation between Fred and Marty. I mean, they're the stars of this particular sketch, and they haven't seen each other in a long time, and they just start riffing.
Hey, how's your son?
I don't have a son.
Oh. Well, I thought I saw you with a little kid.
Oh, no, that's actually my adult brother. He was sort of standing behind me, so the perspective made it look smaller. So he's a grown-up, you know. So, I'm sorry, how's your son?
Well, the waiter or the porn star?
The waiter.
Oh, he's doing porn now.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Boy, time goes fast, doesn't it?
And you have to wonder, with both of their improv backgrounds, how much of this was made up. I'm sure, a lot of it was put on cue cards, but you have to think that some of this kind of just was put in on the fly. Fred saying that he eats 25 bagels a day, and Marty's writing a book about World War II, but he doesn't know anything about it. He hadn't even heard about it. It's a lot of fun. It's those awkward conversations that you sometimes have with people you haven't seen in 20 years. So I think there's something there, even though it's obviously elevated for comedy. There's something relatable in this kind of wackiness.
Yeah, exactly. Marty's character is having a Christmas party, but due to his schedule, he has to do it in March.
Right, yes, exactly.
And he now lives in a big field, so you just go to the field and you can turn any direction and you'll find the party. So this is well done. I think this sketch, it was a really good sketch, but I think it probably gets lost amidst like just the sheer amount of standout, more probably fun, more loud material that was in this episode. But this is one of those that I think was so well written and so well done. I don't want it to get lost in this episode. It still probably does for some people, just because everything else was a lot bigger and a lot louder than this old friend sketch.
I mean, this is one of the things about being on a Christmas episode, essentially, where the Christmas stuff is going to be replayed year after year after year, and something like this is going to get lost in the sands of time of a 50-year-old show. So, yeah, you're right, but it should get its moment in the sun.
And we end, this is the last, I guess, sketch. It was kind of half sketch, half lead into a song. A lot of people remember, they still play this when they do the Christmas episodes to this day. Bill, we get another megastar on the show this evening.
Right. I mean, we haven't talked about like the musical guests in these shows, which have nothing to do with Marty's performance, but Randy Newman, no doubt, and now Paul McCartney. I mean, that's pretty amazing, especially to have the former Beatle on the show, and to see him be able to be in this sketch where they're trying out for a pageant, and Paul can't sing. He has to play his triangle. And talk about meta within meta. He's playing a triangle, which Ed Grimley would play, right? So and then obviously the joke is that Marty can't actually sing. They try to dismiss them, and Paul desperately wants to sing.
Can I sing too? No! Because you don't sing! Because you can't sing! If you could sing, then you'd sing. But you can't sing, I sing. It's not a complicated theory. I'm sorry. I have the $1 million voice, okay? You don't.
Can I finally sing? And we cut to Wonderful Christmas Time, and it's one of the greatest Christmas songs ever done on SNL.
Yeah, and I don't particularly love Wonderful Christmas Time, but I liked this performance of it. So that speaks to how well it was done that night. Yeah,
I mean, we get Paul doing his thing. We bring the children's choir back in, which is fantastic that they get to do after doing something so solemn at the beginning of the show, to come out and have a lot of fun with probably somebody they've never heard of, but when they're probably in their 20s now and going back and watching that they got to sing with Paul McCartney. Like, that's pretty damn great.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a highlight for them. And this was a highlight amongst a lot of highlights in this episode. I consider this an all-time classic for me. Bunch of memorable moments. Bill, there was not a single dud in this episode.
No, this is the kind of episode where I wish we were doing the Saturday Night Network podcast at that time, because this would be something that we would be talking about the entire season on how great this was from beginning to end. There's nothing bad about it, and Marty just really kind of shows how great he is again.
Yeah, and I would demand that Andrew Dick would be on that episode.
Yes.
I dare you, Andrew, to say something bad about this episode. Yeah, we love Andrew, but
yes.
So, yeah, what an episode. So he returns 12 years later, season 48, his most recent one in December of 2022, with his buddy Steve Martin hosting together off the success of Only Murders in the Building.
Yeah, and this was something, not to toot my own horn, but I don't get predictions right a lot. But I did predict this at the beginning of season 47 on the Saturday Night Network, that these two would host together again at some point. It took a year and a half, but they made my prediction come true. And
don't strain your shoulder there too much, Bill, with patting yourself on the back.
Listen, I get so much
your
wrong.
Pitching arm.
Yes, when I get something right, I have to, toot my own horn for a second. Yeah, no, this was everything we dream of. Like again, to do another Christmas episode with these two, right back where they started, 36 years earlier. Sans Chevy, of course, but yeah, to see them come back in this manner after a resurgence in their careers. Obviously, they tour together as well, which I've seen the show, and it's fantastic to go see them. Paul Schaefer actually plays piano in a lot of those shows as well. So these guys have an unbelievable chemistry together, and to see them working together after all this time was great.
And it was a fun monologue, too. So, of course, they continue this jokey dynamic of Marty being less than. That's a funny, inside joke during the monologue. But Steve and Marty eulogizing each other was so good. Bill, I don't know if this is something they do on their stage show. It seems like something that they do, but I love that they chose this to do for their monologue.
People always ask me what Steve was really like, and I'd say, I don't know, you're his wife. And he was such a great dad. And you could tell that from his children. They're so polite. You go to his house and they'd say, would you like anything, Mr. Short? Could I get you a drink, Mr. Short? Can you give this note to the police, Mr. Short?
It is something that they do in the show. They do mix it up with their eulogy jokes. They don't do the same ones every time. So even if you had seen the show, you wouldn't necessarily have heard the jokes. And they're just so damn funny, it doesn't matter. I can hear it a second time. That's okay.
I do remember, since it's such a fresh episode, I did remember most of the beats of this episode, and I remember them doing this, but I still laughed at the eulogy jokes.
Yeah, I mean, Marty's joke about Steve looking down on all of us because he always looked down on everyone was a great one from Marty. Reminds me of that classic SNL sketch, Dick in a Box. There's just a lot of good singers in this.
What a great one. So another awesome monologue. And then when we talk about classic hosts and episodes, the monologue, in my opinion, should play a huge part in it. Because you have certain monologues we see lately, especially this season and last season, it's more of like a get to know the host monologue. Here's my background. I used to love SNL as a kid, and it's more just straightforward. But when you have these Hall of Fame caliber hosts, you're going to get these elevated monologues for the most part, Bill.
Yes, you have to do more. You're absolutely right. Whether it's an alumni or somebody who's hosted 3 or 4 times, that's a funny joke too. And I think Marty made this joke on one of the reunion specials. It's almost as if he doesn't count his 1986 hosting. Have you noticed that? So he tells a joke where they're showing how many times Steve Martin has hosted, and it's 16 times. And then they show Marty, and it's only 3. So what are they leaving out? That's kind of a question. And he also made a joke after he had hosted twice about he's a one-time host, and how is he not better than Robert Blake or O.J. Simpson?
Oh.
So I don't know. Does he not count his first hosting gig? Right.
Yeah. I don't know. That's an interesting observation. Yeah. Only a SNL super fan like Bill Kenney can give us that.
Yeah. Nobody else noticed or cared.
That's hilarious. So I think the first sketch that they did that night, I know I'm going to tease something, but there is an instant classic sketch, in my opinion, from this episode. But the first one I find interesting because we were talking about these hosts coming back and being in recurring sketches. This was actually a recurring sketch that Steve and Marty were in the science room.
I have a fun safety joke, Josh. Knock, knock.
Come in.
No. Josh, you say, knock, knock, who's there, okay? Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Safety.
Hi, I'm Josh.
No. Do you not know how this works? You've never heard of it? You say safety who, okay? Knock, knock.
Safety who?
Are you okay, Mr. Science?
I'm upset.
Oh, come back,
I think this was a good one for Marty and Steve, Bill.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to have two people doing this, but I think with the caliber of Steve and Marty, I think you can pull this off. If you don't remember, this is something they had done about 3 or 4 other times, where it's a science teacher who's teaching these two very stupid children in Mikey and Cecily. And it's one of the last times we get to see Cecily as a cast member, so that's a lot of fun as well. She's all over this episode, which in hindsight, as we find out a week later when she's leaving, this is the end of her tenure. It makes it a little more poignant that we're getting to see her all over this episode. And yeah, this is played for a lot of good laughs. One of them is Dr. Science and one of them is Mr. Science. And the kids just don't understand anything. They're trying to prompt them into these really easy questions. You know, where does rain come from? Where does snow come from? Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff here.
Of course, wisdom that Cecily's character, Lonnie, the wisdom that her sister gives her all the time in these sketches.
Yes.
Yeah, I love the beats. Marty and Steve as well, but Marty especially is really good at playing somebody who has rage or even contained rage that's so close to bursting at the seams. And so that's why I said, I think the science room was a good one for Marty too, is because he's good at playing like the frustrated, I'm about to fly off the handle kind of character.
Yeah, Steve gets to play the calm guy in this, even though he's getting very frustrated as well. He has to kind of calm Marty down, which is a lot of fun to see.
Yeah, definitely. So should we talk about this instant classic sketch, or is there another one that you might want to go to before?
Boy, there is a lot on this episode, so I'm good going wherever you want to go. We can talk about Holiday Train.
Okay, let's do that.
Which is a lot of fun. It's a play on the White Christmas movie with Bing Crosby. And it's, when they do movies from 80 years ago, it's really funny. Like, who are they pandering to at this point? All of these people. But this is a classic movie where they're riding on a train and they sing this kind of famous song, Snow. And we get to see Marty and Cecily and Keenan and Steve as they're riding the train to Buffalo in the 1940s. And, they've never seen snow. So Keenan's kind of shocked by this. We eventually find out after a song and dance number that they're actually bears. So they hibernate and they end up falling asleep every time before they get to Buffalo. And we even get a little JAJ in there saying, don't wake up the bears. They're like, they'll kill you.
They're going to eat us all.
Yes, they're going to eat you. So this is a lot of fun. I'm a fan. I'm a sucker for these kind of song and dance numbers, especially from older movies. So this was a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, that was a fun one. Next one, A Visit with Santa. Marty plays Sprinkles the elf. Marty's a good grumpy elf, so this is right up his alley, in my opinion, as well.
Yeah, is it Sprinkles or Pringles? Yeah, I mean, he's such a great crabby elf, and we even get kind of before it was known how much Taylor Swift would blow up in 2023. one of the kids comes up and asks for Taylor Swift tickets, and Marty yells, "Get a job."
Yeah. This is a funny moment when Marty gets up and Steve goes, "You have legs."
Right. Yes. Yeah. So we get to see a lot of their fun playfulness again together. And again, Steve is kind of playing the more grounded character, while Marty is just kind of off the rails.
Yeah. So this was a fun one. See Marty at Grumpy. The next one, Bill, A Christmas Carol. Let's talk about this one.
This will be in the best of SNL Christmas special for the next 15 to 20 years, right? I mean, this is an all-time classic. We called it that week that this was an all-time classic. Sometimes you just know, right?
Exactly.
And Marty's playing Scrooge, and Steve is the ghost of Marley. And he wakes up just as in the movie or in the book, all about Christmas, sees Tiny Tim outside, sees this orphan outside, throws a coin down, and of course, insanity ensues.
My dear boy, you know the prize goose in the window down the street?
The one as big as me?
Ah, that's the one. Go and buy it so that Tiny Tim and his family might have a Christmas feast.
But what should I buy it with, sir? I'm so poor.
Why, with this, of course. Why didn't you catch it?
What? You're blaming me?
He knocks out Sarah Sherman's eyeballs with the coins. He scares a horse who decapitates Mikey Day. Tiny Tim falls into a well, into a sewer. So yeah, this is a lot of fun. This is the kind of escalation that we're always begging for. Such a great, and Marty plays such a great role as Ebenezer Scrooge.
Yeah, that's always one of my big complaints when there's something there with the sketch, but I'm asking myself, why doesn't this sketch work? And the answer a lot of times is there could have been more escalation. This one, textbook on how you do escalation. And Bill, I'm not one who's necessarily into gore, like comedic gore. I did like the Farewell Mr. Bunting sketch with Red Armisen. I loved this Christmas Carol, even though it was gory, but it was clever. And the gore was done in a smart, almost unexpected way. It wasn't gore for gore's sake necessarily. It was just the timing of the sketch was almost perfect.
Exactly. And that's what I always say. I'm okay with fart jokes or bodily function jokes or gore, but it has to be going somewhere. And this was going somewhere from the very beginning. This had a lot of fun stuff going on. It didn't seem repetitive. Even though it was coins doing all of this damage, they found a way to make it escalate in a way that was very funny and got the point across.
Yeah, of course, at the end, Marty closes the windows and the glass breaks, and we can only imagine what the glass does to everybody on the ground.
You just hear the screaming and the blood spurts as in the background.
Yeah, one of the best sketches of season 48, in my opinion, A Christmas Carol. Anything else from this episode that's noteworthy to you?
No, I mean, he doesn't get to do his Ed Grimley, although he kind of does his Ed Grimley dance in the kind of forgettable Minky Carmichael from 1992. But even something that wasn't great like this sketch, Marty elevates it with his humor. So even though there wasn't a whole lot there, somebody like a comedic pro like Marty still finds something funny to make out of it.
Yeah, that's just it. You're among the best of the best when, even if the writing's not there, even if a sketch doesn't work, you're still fun to watch on screen. With this Minky sketch, I didn't think it was that great, but I knew what they were making fun of. I think Marty was fun to watch. Not one of the highlights though, but Marty always gives a great performance. I think 4 really good episodes, probably 1 or 2 classic episodes. This most recent Christmas episode he did last season with Steve was great. Yeah, I think Barney needs to be brought up as far as great hosts. And I sometimes I think that doesn't happen because he shared a couple of his hosting stints with Chevy and Steve. But really, when you rewatch his stuff, I think the best hosting stints that he had were by himself. And that says a lot about Marty, in my opinion.
It really does. And here's the thing. We have a lot of five-timers. Marty hopefully will be in that club. But something with some of the five-timers that we see, whether it's by choice or by, culture moving on, is that they're kind of constrained to one cast. Buck Henry, all-time classic host, only worked with the first cast. Justin Timberlake, John Hamm, great hosts, but we don't get to see them play outside of a certain era. To see Marty from 1986 all the way through 2022 play with all-time classic cast members like Sherry O'Terry, Will Ferrell, John Lovitz, Jan Hooks, all the way to Bill Hader and now Heidi Gardner and people like that, is a testament to his comedic genius, right? There's no arguing how great he is. And I sure you have a list in your mind, as I do, what I want from SNL 50. I think all of us super fans do. My hope is that, along with a couple of other former cast members, Kristen Wiig and Dana Carvey, I hope we get to see the three of them put into the Five-Timers Club in SNL 50. I would love to see Marty come back, even though it'll only be a couple of years and is not really his forte to come back that quickly. It'd be great to see that happen.
Yeah, I completely agree. I wonder if that would change the dynamic of like Marty in the Five-Timers sketches, because he plays the waiter in the club and it's self-deprecating. So maybe they can put like some sort of play off of that while inducting Marty into the Five-Timers Club.
Exactly. Yeah, that's something we haven't touched on. He had 10 cameos over the last 20 years as well. And one of the things that he does so great is that Five-Timer sketch where he's the waiter. So yeah, that would be great to see if they can kind of flip that on its head and finally induct him.
Yeah, and a great thing about Marty too is that he's still relevant. He's in a relevant show, Only Murders in the Building. I watched season 1. I'll be honest, I have some catching up to do. Do you watch Only Murders in the Building?
I do. Yeah, we're actually finishing up season 3 right now. We only have a couple episodes left. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of Marty in that?
He's a tour de force. Like he plays this failed Broadway director who happens upon Steve Martin and Selena Gomez in their building, and murders just kind of follow them around. It's kind of a strange concept, but it's very well done. It's very smart, and he plays a great role. And again, we see how well he plays off of Steve.
Yeah, I just love that younger people are seeing the comedic genius of Martin Short.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, there's definitely people who are harder to explain to the younger viewers. Like, oh, this guy was really funny about 15, 20 years ago. But yeah, you're right. Marty is still there, has been there for 40 plus years. And that's kind of endearing to have somebody like that, and Steve Martin as well.
Yeah, they could actually see it. So Bill, now's the time. It worked with Jason Sudeikis. It worked, I guess, it took a while, but it worked with Jan Hooks as well. So you tell
my best friend Robert Smigel.
And Robert Smigel, your best friend of Bill, friend of the show. You tell the SNL voters why they should consider casting a vote for Martin Short for the SNL Hall of Fame.
I think we've really driven home the point on how iconic Martin Short is. He spans 40 years on the show. He has had amazing chemistry with everybody on the cast, from Jan Hooks and John Lovitz all the way through Heidi Gardner. And he's an all-time comedic legend. And one of the few people from the Ebersol era, let's be honest, that Lauren acknowledges even being on the show. Like, we don't even get Billy Crystal anymore. So yeah, he's such a great comedic presence. You know what you're getting from any SNL episode where Martin Short's going to show up. And yeah, I mean, 4 times, all of them, I would argue, are some form of classic. So let's put them in.
So there's that. That was Bill Kenney in conversation with Thomas Senna downstairs in the conversation room of the SNL Hall of Fame. Thanks so much, fellas. That was a riveting conversation. I think that Marty is... I think that in terms of a host, he's got to be in the SNL Hall of Fame. He's got to be. It's built for him. It's made for him. He epitomizes what a host should be and what they should do. He can make you laugh with his face. He can make you laugh with his body movements. He can make you laugh with a great executed joke. And he's the consummate sketch performer. He was built for SNL. So there's that. I would like to play you a sketch now that Thomas has selected, and it comes from Marty's third hosting stint in season 38. It was December 15th, 2012, in case you're taking notes. And it's called The Royal Family Doctor. So let's give this a listen now and see if you can hear Marty trying to make Bill Hader break. It's really interesting. This is a great sketch. So let's give it a listen now.
Doctor, the representative from Buckingham Palace is here.
Wonderful. Send him in, please.
Hello, good afternoon, Doctor. I am Rupert Smythe Pennington. And may I begin by congratulating you on your selection as OBGYN to the Duchess of Cambridge.
It's a great honor.
My role today is to instruct on the protocol of dealing with a member of the royal family.
I've met members of the royal family before, so I assure you I'm up to speed.
Well, you may well know the protocol for having an audience with the Duchess, but there is an entirely different set of protocol when one has an audience with the royal...
I'm sorry, are you referring to the vagina?
I will mark that down that you said that word once. Say it again, you'll be deported to Australia.
Understood.
Moving on. When you meet a royal face-to-face, a small head bow is appropriate. When you meet the royal, the following is appropriate.
I'm not comfortable with that.
Well, I suggest you get comfortable with it. Because after the nod, it is proper to address it as milady, and then greet it with the phrase, fancy meeting you here.
That seems odd.
Well, I assure you that on the day it will seem natural. Now, throughout the examination, it is imperative you say the following words to yourself in the exact order as this. This is great. This is so great. This is by far the best one of these I've ever seen. Man, oh boy, this is great.
To myself.
Yes, but loud enough for the Duchess to hear. That's the secret, isn't it, when you're speaking super enough?
I see.
Yeah. Now, on certain formal occasions, you will find that the royal will be wearing a hat.
How does that work?
It's a small hat.
I see.
If it is wearing a hat, you must wait for it to tip its hat before you tip yours.
What if I'm not wearing a hat?
Well, if it's wearing a hat, I suggest you get a hat. This is the royal after all.
I'm sorry, must we call it the royal ahem?
Well, the only other acceptable terms that I know of is the governess, the kingmaker, her Downton Abbey, the Channel, Dame Judi Dench, Piccadilly Cervix, and Thomas's English Muffin. Now,
I'll stick with the royal ahem.
I thought you might. Moving on. There will be a member of the Royal Palace Guard in the room at all times, but I assure you that you will not notice them.
I think I'd notice a member of the Palace Guard.
Have you noticed that one has been here the whole time? Hello.
Very complicated.
Now, as royal anatomies goes, hers is pretty simple. Just be thankful you're not dealing with Camilla Parker Bowles.
Kells is reachable only by an old drawbridge and is guarded by a troll who asks you a riddle.
Yes, I've heard about that.
Now, this is very important, and I want you to listen to me. Please pay attention to what I'm about to say. Do you foresee any occasion whatsoever where you would have cause to examine the royal butthole?
Absolutely none.
You're certain?
I'm certain.
Very good. That'll save us a few hours. Let's see. Butthole, 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 more butthole.
Just out of curiosity, other names for the royal butthole?
Church of Taint Andrew. Oh, here we are, delivery day. Now, when the child is delivered, it's important that you do not reach for it unless it offers a hand to you. If it does not offer its hand, then just wait for it to slide out on its own.
Very good.
You will play peekaboo with the child, and if it laughs, you will be knighted.
And if it cries?
And I think that about wraps it up. I don't have much more. I did not know you would be in the hospital this morning.
Oh, I'm here to get me Judi Dench washed. Not to blow.
Right, chat.
All right, there we go. What you waiting for? Get in there, will you?
Right.
That was, of course, Fred Armisen coming in at the end as Queen Elizabeth and paying off the Judi Dench remarks. So, what did you think? This is a little bit of a longer episode, but we had a lot to say. This is a big one, and I hope you get it right when it comes to voting, because it just seems to me that cast members get bumped up and hosts, musical guests, and writers are sort of left behind, with hosts bubbling up more often than not. Musical guests and writers are left behind, and that's just plain sad. So there's that. That's pretty much what I've got for you this week. I hope you stay well, and on your way out, please, as you walk past the Weekend Update exhibit, there's a light switch on the wall. Turn it out, because the SNL Hall of Fame is now closed.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. Make sure to rate, review, share, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media at SNL HOF. This is Doug Denant saying, see you next week.